this meeting. Okay, we're recording. So I'm the chair of the board for this meeting, and I call this May meeting of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority's Governing Board to order. Thank you to the Seattle Public Library for hosting the in-person location today. We begin every meeting by grounding ourselves in our theory of change, which reads, if we create a homelessness response system that centers people with lived experience of homelessness, then we will be able to respond to the needs and eliminate inequities in order to end homelessness for all. Next up, we have our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that King County is located on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish peoples. We honor this land and its people, past and present, and we are committed to directing funding and resources to organizations led by and in support of Native and Indigenous people. Thank you all for being here this morning. Afiang, will you please take the roll call?
Chair Wilson.
Present.
Member Zahalai.
Present.
Member Barone.
Present.
Member Fain. Member Aviva.
Present.
Member Ring. Member Foster.
Present.
Member Bracken. Member Hay. Member Prince.
Here.
Member Backus. Oh, I believe that Member Robertson is the alternate for Backus today. Member Robertson.
I'm here.
Member Jang.
Here. Present.
Chair, we have 8, so we do not yet have quorum. In order to conduct board business, we need one more person.
Okay, well, I guess we'll hang out until one more person joins. Do we know if we're expecting additional board members, or, if people told us in advance that they weren't going to be attending?
There's one more we're going to put in just 1 second, Mayor Wilson.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, we have quorum. We can begin.
Okay, wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here at the May meeting of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority Governing Board. So we've done roll call, we have quorum. So next step, we have our consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, and that is the approval of the April 2026 Governing Board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the April 2026 minutes?
So moved.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our consent agenda has passed. And next up, we're going to have our monthly CEO report from Dr. Kelly Kennison. Kelly, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Good morning, board members and guests and members of the public who are tuning in. Today, I'll be updating you on KCRHA's response to the forensic evaluation and our plans for the initial release of the 2026 point in time count numbers. I would normally also provide an update on our continuum of care work, but we're privileged today to have COC board co-chairs Dorsal Plants and Ruby Tuesday Romero here with us to brief you on their work. Turning to the forensic audit, as you know, the evaluation identified significant deficiencies in financial management, documentation, reconciliation, internal controls, reporting, and governance oversight. Since the delivery of the evaluation report, we've been working very hard on responses and getting to work on remediation. We submitted an initial response on May 8th. We began formal corrective action plan planning to capture ongoing and new work streams. We had our first meeting with our board finance committee. We continued meeting with our funders from the city of Seattle and county to problem solve and move the work forward. We briefed our Continuum of Care board. We briefed providers, and we began evaluating the need for any external stabilization support. We also have continued building out a pretty robust internal corrective action workbook to make sure everything is recorded, tracked, and that it has visibility across the executive leadership team. We've also been able to apply about $1.5 million in available funding or available offsets to our administrative overspend. So that was progress that we were excited to report. Our corrective action plan will be delivered to you later today. It organizes our response into concrete work streams around receivables, the King County investment pool and cash flow issues, fund advances, administrative overspend, accounting infrastructure, internal controls, governance, external stabilization, and regional continuity. It sets 30, 60, and 90-day milestones for phase 1 of our implementation plan. It identifies owners and reporting pathways and establishes our first 30-day check-in milestones and biweekly finance committee review. We also acknowledge KCRHA has this work to do while protecting provider payment continuity, meeting our continuum of care responsibilities, and operating our HMIS data hub, and much more. My commitment is that we will report clearly, escalate barriers swiftly and honestly, and keep our focus on correcting the deficiencies while protecting the regional functions that providers, funders, and people experiencing homelessness rely on. Moving on to our point in time count update. We've been, I know, talking to you a lot about this since before December, when planning was really underway, and our point in time count happened at the end of January, beginning of February. We've been giving you regular updates on that data collection and plans for the initial findings release. This is one of our most closely watched data releases in our regional response system. And we know from past experience of the point in time count that just releasing a number isn't sufficient to really understand how we put this number in context and what role it plays in understanding our homelessness response system. We need to include some other information about system flow, shelter, and housing capacity. We combine it with some HMIS information, so using survey and administrative data, which is a best practice, and a clear explanation of what the data can and cannot tell us. So we really used the feedback on past practice to shape our approach this year. We've conducted 5 partner outreach sessions. We have had regular PIT review sessions with our internal experts and the experts at University of Washington. And we are abiding by our professional standards for releasing data according to HUD and the American Statistical Association. We know that some of our partners would like some more information and want to understand better how they can be positioned to respond to our release of the information. We take that seriously. We had planned to give you an embargoed copy of the results on Tuesday morning, May 27th, you meeting the governing board members. And then we would release publicly later in the day. We've had a request to do some more sessions with providers and advocates to let them know kind of what context we'll be providing with the data. We're absolutely open to that. That does change the schedule by probably just a few days, which we're comfortable with. We do need to make sure that this isn't an exercise in opening up the data analysis or doing anything that might call into question our transparent process and the objectivity of the data, as we are the legal stewards of the data by HUD's authority. So wanted to let you know that we're making plans to do some additional sessions. Be happy, I know we briefed you a lot on this, but if anyone has decided they'd like an in-person briefing or a different kind of briefing than receiving the materials that morning, we're happy to adapt with a little more time. Again, the goal for sort of taking into account some feedback from providers and others, and sort of having a press to get the data out quickly is making sure that we do this responsibly and transparently with community as we do this entire process. Our Continuum of Care Board, of course, is the community steward of this process. And we need to support public understanding of the data as well. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Wilson.
Okay, thank you, CEO Kinnison. So before we go into public comment, I'm going to open it up for board members if they have any questions or comments on the chair's report. Raise your hands. Okay, I see board member Zahalai.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, CEO, for that report. Very appreciative of the work that's going on. I just want to reiterate to the public that we have a lot of work to do here. And we know that we have 2 primary goals with respect to KCRHA, and that those 2 goals are first and foremost to provide critical services to our unhoused community that is outside, and also to steward public funds well. And both of those are our 2 goals. With respect to the latter of stewarding public funds and accountability, we know that forensic report, as CEO Kinnison laid out, found just completely unacceptable findings with respect to the way public resources were being accounted for, taken care of, used effectively. And I really appreciate the work that's going on to correct those flaws, those mistakes, those lack of best practices, and especially the response that we received that Mayor Wilson and I put forward in our request for corrective actions. I know we got a letter back, and we're very appreciative of the work that's going on to meet the requirements laid out in that letter. And it also should be said that an organization of this size should absolutely have always had those proper financial controls in place from the very beginning. And that's not me finger wagging. Of course, King County is itself going through a lot of accountability work as well, but it's important to say that all of these financial controls should have been in place from the very beginning. And it's clear that we have a lot of work to do to get this organization into the best place possible. But I also want to speak to the other goal that I mentioned before, which is our primary purpose of continuing to deliver critical services to people who are outside, especially roofs over people's heads. And with respect to that goal, it is so imperative that we do not disrupt those services. And so I know that there have been a lot of calls to dismantle the organization and do things of that nature. But we understand that first and foremost, we have to make sure that our providers who are out there doing that work get paid. We have to make sure that we have an entity that can receive those critical federal resources, the COC funds that only KCRHA is designated to hold right now. We can't jeopardize tens of millions of dollars that go into this system during this time. And so I just want to reiterate to the public that accountability work and the work of delivering services to people go hand in hand. We have to go about this process with urgency and accountability, but also with thoughtfulness and being methodical as well. I'm grateful to both the King County Council and the Seattle City Council who have given the mayor and I a roadmap and a timeline for going about these conversations in a deliberative way. And that work will be underway, and we will do it in partnership with our CEO here and the organization and our community and our providers. But just wanted to address those issues that we hear the community. We know that there's a lot of work to do. We appreciate the timeline that's been given to us by our respective councils, and that work will be underway. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Zahalai. And I see Board Member Foster's hand.
Thank you so much, Chair. I appreciate that. And thank you so much, CEO Kinnison and Chair Zahalai for both of those updates. I was actually just going to speak to some of the work that we did in the city and say how much I appreciate the partnership on the county side from Councilmember Barone and Councilmember Fain as we are laying out in our respective bodies timelines to get information from the agency and to ensure that on the executive side, we have that decision making so that we can move in the right direction. And Chair Zahalai already spoke to some of the things I was going to raise, and I'll say again, I think the importance of the agency and the role for Continuum of Care really can't be understated, and the work that the agency is doing for coordinating for HMIS. And we want to make sure that those functions continue, and we just know absolutely how critical those are. So we are balancing these two very challenging things at the same time. So I appreciate your leadership. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Foster. And I see Board Member Barone's hand.
Thank you very much, Chair Wilson. I also just wanted to add my comments on this topic and reiterate some of the points that Councilmember Foster made. And I think I wanted to make sure that we didn't have an opportunity to report back to all of you as fellow governing board members about the work that's been happening on the council side, at least in the county council side. And I want to acknowledge the work that the partnership of Councilmember Fain on this effort. As you know, two of our colleagues here on the county council introduced a motion that would, trigger the dissolution of KCRHA eventually. We had a discussion at the county council about the process that we wanted to do, and we had unanimous approval at the council of a motion that as Councilmember Zahalai, Executive Zahalai, I'm naming you by your old title, that Executive Zahalai mentioned that is going to trigger this timeline for us to consider this. We're going to have some updates by the middle of June, and then a kind of a more formal report by August 1st. So we want to report back on the work that's happened. And I think reiterating what everybody has said, we absolutely want to make sure that we make improvements to the authorities' financial situation, but also want to make sure that we don't do anything that's going to actually harm the response system that we're all responsible for, and ensuring that services for our unhoused neighbors are continuing without disruption. So thank you for everybody who's been part of these discussions. And again, thank you to Councilmember Fain, who's been a key partner in these efforts on the county council side. And I appreciate the work that's been done on the city council side as well. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, just to call on myself briefly, I think a lot has been said that I will not entirely repeat, but just also appreciate the work that the Seattle City Council has done and the King County Council to help us lay out a timeline for kind of doing our due diligence and setting us up to make decisions with all of the information that we need, and also believe very strongly in the importance of continuity for our service providers and for the folks experiencing homelessness that we're serving, looking forward to the process ahead as we make those decisions. Okay, well, I'm going to move us into the next item on our agenda, which will be our public comment. If you are here with us in person at the Seattle Public Library, please sign up to comment with Afyang if you haven't done that already. If you are providing comment via Zoom, please raise your hand now and you will be called in the order received. Each commenter will be able to speak for 2 minutes. Commenters will hear a bell when they have 30 seconds left, and virtual commenters will be muted when their time is up. Public comment will be open for 15 minutes or until no others would like to speak, whichever is sooner. And we do ask public commenters to please keep your comments related to items within the board's purview. Afyang, will you please open the public comment?
Certainly, Chair. First up, we have Michael Pide. Yes.
Hi, my name is Michael Pickett. I'm a community volunteer. I serve on the board of Fair Start and I've been part of the Pit Count. I live in Seattle. I am not, nor have I ever been homeless. My career was in management consulting, helping organizations operate better, more efficiently, more effectively, and grow. I worked with Microsoft and Starbucks and Boeing, Gates Foundation, City of Seattle, King County, State of Washington. Every single one of those organizations had areas they needed to improve on and get better at. The nature of organizations is to evolve and get better. Each of you on the governing board, I suspect, works for an organization that could do things better. KCRHA has been operating for 5 years, given that they were generated in kind of a startup and entrepreneurial environment, and it was formed and led that way. I don't think it's reasonable to expect flawlessness in how they operate. I would submit that KCRHA is now on to version 2, and the previous leaders and many of the people are now in the rearview mirror. I understand the criticism, the desire for all of us to have a better, quicker, and stronger system, and better and quicker and stronger results. And I think we all want that. But the way to effectively address this is a regional issue, and is to solve it as partners in the region. The best thing we can all do, and each of you, I think, need to do as board members, is to advocate for those who are homeless, help KCRHA be more effective, and to hold them accountable. The absence or neutering of KCRHA would set this region back massively at a time that we need to move forward and get better together. All of us, and KCRHA as an improved organization, needs to be part of that. I appreciate the hard work all of you do in representing your community, and I thank you for your time.
Chair, there's no one else in person or online, so we can close public comment.
Thank you. We will then move on to the next section of our agenda, briefings. And next up, we're going to be joined by the co-chairs of the Continuum of Care, Dorsal Plants and Ruby Romero, who will be presenting on the Continuum of Care 2025 accomplishments and 2026 priorities.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Wilson. Can everyone hear me okay?
Great, awesome. Well, good morning. I am so glad to be here with you today. I want to thank the board and their partners for your time and ongoing commitment to the work we're doing. This is the first time that the Continuum of Care Board has been in front of this specific iteration of the governing board. And although I do see some familiar faces, we thought we should start with introductions. So Dorsal, did you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Dorsal Plants, and I'm co-chair of the COC board. Happy to be here with you this morning.
Thanks, Dorsal. And as I stated, my name is Ruby Tuesday Romero. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm a lifelong King County resident. I also share the other half of the chair with Dorsal on the board. And yeah, it does get uncomfortable during the board meetings. So I just wanted to make sure we had our slides up and ready to go. Thank you, Kelsey, appreciate that. So today's goal is to reflect on the 2025 accomplishments and align key priorities and upcoming decisions for 2026. This is a pivotal year given the funding uncertainty and system changes, as you were speaking to today. So just making sure that we start with a clear definition of what the continuum of care is will be critical. And according to the federal program guidelines, it's three things, three critical roles at once. It's the geographical region of our homelessness response system, and that is the physical boundaries of the service area. Here, in our region, it's known to HUD as Washington 500, and it encompasses all of King County, including all 39 cities and municipalities, including my hometown, Seattle. And the collective group of a network or a collective group or a network of partners that are individuals and organizations committed and collectively working towards shared outcomes to end homelessness within our region. It's also a federal funding mechanism. So it's a source of funding that federal dollars come to our region, and the homeless services within our specific region are funded that way, which ultimately shapes what programs we can operate. And I believe Kelsey's going to talk a little bit more about that. So the decisions that we make here impact both the system design and funding flow for our system. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. The core purpose of the Continuum of Care is to convene everyone committed to ending homelessness in our region, as I said earlier. And this is a shared system with distributed responsibilities. And the structure kind of breaks down like this. So the general membership is at the top. It represents the broad community coalition and provides broad community input. Our ecosystem spans from hospitals to schools to shelters, and even the local laundromat could be considered a part of the COC. Right now we have about 300 organizations and individuals working as an interconnected group. Then we go to the COC board, which acts as the governance and decision-making body, sets priorities and approves governance documents, and also makes funding decisions. Then we have our committees and work groups, and those are the teams doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes where technical and policy work happens. So you'll see the system performance committee that is more geared towards the HMIS side of the work that we do, the homeless management information system. We have our coordinated entry committee, and obviously focuses on coordinated entry. We also have our youth action board that incorporates the voices of young people that are living or have lived homeless. We also have our ad hoc work groups where we get things like our charter revisions done. Then it moves on to the functions, and in order to fulfill the federal requirements, we do have to rely on a critical function managed by designated entities. And that is the collaborative applicant and the HMIS lead, as well as the coordinated entry system. And that is currently held by the KCRHA. The collaborative applicant is the one that applies for funding and the planning grants through the HUD application for renewal dollars on behalf of the COC. This ensures that there's HUD compliance and funding submission. The HMIS lead manages the data, privacy, and system metrics to ensure data quality and reporting. And then the coordinated entry manager ensures that the system is streamlined, so there is a unified front door to access services, managing the operation of our coordinated entry system and continuous improvement to support the inflow and outflow of the system. So As a collective group, our central goals across the structure are to coordinate services, promote the efficient use of mainstream resources, and minimize the harm that individuals and families experience while navigating the system. Next slide, please. This is where I get to talk about myself a little bit. What is the COC board? So the COC board serves as the governing body for our homeless response system. We coordinate shelter, housing, and services across the region. Responsibilities are defined federally by HUD and locally in our charter, which we've talked about a lot lately. It is vital to emphasize that this is not just advisory, it is decision-making authority. The board holds direct responsibility for oversight and governance of the entire homeless response system, specifically focusing on the policy direction, funding decisions, and accountability for system performance. However, we can't do it alone. We need a legal authority to apply for and hold federal funds directly, which is why we designate the collaborative applicant, HMIS lead, and coordinated entry manager. So if we could go to the next slide, please. This is who the board is. When looking at who makes up our board, its strength truly comes from the cross-sector perspective. We lean heavily on diversity of sectors of lived expertise, reinforcing a continued commitment to inclusive representation and ensure our choices accurately reflect the community we serve. So I believe this is where I would hand it over to Dorsal.
Thank you, Ruby. Next slide, please. And so while I have the privilege to be in front of you in camera and brag about the 2025 accomplishments, I want to make sure that it's understood that nothing that we did in 2025 would have been possible without the dedicated work of the board members on the COC membership, but also the essential KCRHA staff, which have worked with us over the past year to ensure that continuity of care that you all spoke so much about during the beginning of the meeting. Next slide, please. And so in June, we held our first of 2 convenings that is required as part of the HUD process. We had a very strong turnout, and our focus at that meeting, which took place at North Seattle College, was to focus on state strategic alignment via the Ruckelshaus House Center's work that they had done. And then in November, we saw an increased attendance at our second convening, which was also required. And we had the opportunity there to begin to move our convenings out of the Seattle core and out into the actual membership itself. And so we hosted the November convening on the east side at Bellevue College, and really focused our work and our conversation on the needs and priorities over on the east side. And you'll see when we get to talking about our work in 2026 that we're going to continue that trend into this year. Next slide, please. One of our primary focuses in 2025 was to do our best to respond to the changes in direction and policy and practice that HUD has been undergoing. And a significant part of that was looking at the potential no-fill application and determining where we could set up our continuum for the greatest amount of success in collecting points. One of the areas we saw as an opportunity, not just to respond to the HUD changes, but to also actually further our mission and our work here, was to expand on the recruitment in our board and to bring in some voices that we had yet to have on the COC board. That includes bringing on a representative from law enforcement, because for many of the people we serve in the unhoused community, oftentimes their first interaction with local government is with a local law enforcement officer just doing their job. And so partnering with them. Additionally, we were able to bring on a business representative, somebody who can not only bring the voices of the economic drivers in our region to the board, but can also help us work with them to better understand the needs of our whole community and how we can approach everything together in a way that uplifts all of our community members. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, we were also able to bring on some voices of elected officials representing both the city of Kenmore and the city of Burien this was an opportunity to really bring voices from the full community represented by their elected officials on the board. And so we were really excited to have this opportunity and to take some of the federal changes and really turn them into true opportunities to strengthen our continuum as we continue our work. Next slide, please. And so looking into 2026, recognizing that we are very much into 2026, but as you can imagine, and as you know very well, there's so much going on. So next slide, please. This year, we're continuing our heavy focus on the NOFO process and just preparing our continuum for that work. There's a lot of shifting and a lot of changing and a lot of responsiveness. And so that is really our focus and priority right now. And we are anticipating that release towards the end of this month. In addition to that work, we have also worked to finalize developments to our charter and work to have it adopted by the membership later this year. And then we had spoken previously, but I want to highlight again that our coordinated entry committee has been preparing and is preparing to undertake a pilot of a new assessment process that we feel potentially has the opportunity to better serve our community, because it's built off of the great work that other communities have done, but this one is a little bit more focused and refined to the specific needs here in King County. This has been a very decision-dense year, and there's been a lot of tight timelines, but the board and KCRHA has been up to the challenge. Next slide, please. So, I neglected to mention, and I do want to highlight that in July, we are having our first of the 2 required convenings for this year. This will be in, dare I say, the best part of King County. We will be hosting it down in South King County and continuing that effort to broaden and recognize that our membership is serving a wide range of people throughout the entirety of King County. Next slide now for real. Thank you. As we move towards the end of the year, we will finalize and adopt our charter. In November, we will have our second required convening, and then we will begin our work planning for 2027 with a goal for the COC board to come to you and talk about the work that we'll be doing in 2027, probably a little bit earlier next time around. But we are always happy and dedicated and willing to come to this board and share in the great work. And I'm going to turn it over now to our dedicated COC manager, Kelsey Beckmeyer, to talk about what KCRHA is doing in 2026.
Thank you. Good morning, Kelsey Beckmeyer, she, her pronouns. I am the COC manager with KCRHA. So want to share with the governing board a bit about the work that we have anticipated coming up as the collaborative applicant. The first kind of major body of work that we're focusing on is the FY25 funding. These are the awards that are active under calendar year 26 into calendar year 27. As you may be aware, the fiscal year 25 process was quite abnormal. Rather than a typical application process, it underwent a lot of litigation, and then we had Congress step in with the T-HUD Appropriations Act, kind of directing HUD on how they needed to handle FY25 funding. We got award announcements for 25 funding in buckets. That usually comes all at once, and we have an understanding of what we anticipate for the entire spectrum of funding and programs that we support. And this year it has been in quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and 4 awards. The timeline has also been quite slow and disrupted this year. There are weekly updates that HUD is having to provide to the court based on the National Alliance on Ending Homelessness versus HUD case that is ongoing right now. The first award announcement happened at the end of March. Award letters, however, were not sent until April. And then the actual first agreement for that Q1 awards did not come until early May. With those agreements included an addendum with grant terms and conditions that are actually prohibited due to the King County v. Turner case. There is a lot of legal action happening with HUD, a lot of which has been spurred by our local government, by King County, by Washington State. And KCRHA has been playing an active role in ensuring that the things that HUD is trying to do that are not applicable and not allowed do not happen. There was a court filing that HUD rescinded the addendum due to litigation and this ongoing kind of advocacy around those grant terms. We were issued a rescission letter and are moving forward with the first grant agreement. The Q2 awards were announced in April, and we received an award letter from HUD in May. And yesterday, we actually received the first batch of Q2 grant agreements. We also heard yesterday the announcement of Q3 and Q4 awards. So HUD met their July 1 deadline that THUD set. We do not anticipate, though, that the next process of executing grant agreements will go any faster than we have seen. While HUD has made announcements and sent out grant agreements, as of earlier this week, less than half have actually been signed and fully executed with HUD. So things are moving slowly. We continue to work with our local field office to make sure that our process at least goes well, and that KCRHA is very quick and responsive when we receive our grant agreements so that funds are accessible and that we are getting contracts to providers as quickly as we can. We held a kickoff meeting with providers yesterday so that they are ready when we have funds available to get contracts signed and executed. We hope by October to have all of the grant agreements for the entirety of fiscal year 25 completed and executed. That is the aim. It will take a partnership between both KCRHA, HUD, and our providers to meet that goal. The next piece I want to talk to you about is the heavy work that we have coming up. We are preparing for the fiscal year 26 Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. This is the competition that HUD has nationally for all COCs to renew and apply for new funding. We anticipate to see a very different year, not too dissimilar from the FY25 process. To be determined. I don't like to try and predict too much of what we will see from HUD. In early May, KCRHA posted the notice for our local competition. We were hoping to give as much heads up to all providers in our community, both who currently have COC funding and those who may want to apply for it, what to expect, how we are anticipating moving forward with that, and what the hopeful timelines will be. The NOFO is always a very fast process. The application period is short, the review period is short, and there is a heavy lift of work that has to be done in that short period of time. The NOFO from HUD should be available either next week on the 29th or at least by the 1st of June. HUD has stated both dates in various publications. So we are gearing up and getting ready to quickly respond in the best way possible. We are hoping to open what is called the local competition on June 10th. This is also when we'll hold an information session for the community for anyone who is interested in applying for funds. The hopeful due date for all the applications for the local competition will be July 3rd. That is then when all applications for renewing and new projects will go to a rater panel who will evaluate all applications, usually upwards of 60 to 70 applications, to develop a priority list. This is going to be a particularly complex rater panel, as we are predicting to have some constraints around what we can apply for and what we can renew. The December 19th, 2025 NOFO indicated there will be a cap on permanent housing that can be renewed. So we will be working and have been working pretty diligently with all of our current applicants around how our community will handle a potential cap on what permanent housing projects can be funded. We will be presenting to the COC board the preliminary priority list at their meeting in August. And by August 10th, we will be publishing what projects will be sent forward to HUD and in what priority order. There are mandated deadlines that we have to meet in the NOFO. So we have to make sure that our timeline is meeting those deadlines as well. In August, again, we will be really focusing on that priority list and working on the consolidated application. The NOFO is projected to be due on August 26th. So from beginning of June to end of August, we'll be nose to the grind, really working to make sure we put forward the strongest application we can. We have done well in the last cycle with the consolidated application, and think that the ability to put forward strong narrative and present how our COC and our homeless response system is performing, and the work that is going on in our community, we're ready for that. HUD has indicated that they will make announcements for FY26 awards in December. This is when we'll have an idea about what the next cycle of funding year will look like for our community. FY26 funds would begin on a rolling basis in 2027 through 2028. With December announcements, we would anticipate seeing grant agreements start to come to communities February or March of 27, if I'm being generous. And we would start seeing the actual contracting with providers start to roll out in May or June of 27. Again, this is a very tight timeline. There's a lot of changes that may happen when it comes to this December 26 announcement. So there'll be a lot of kind of work to see what reconfiguring are we going to be having to address and having to work with ahead of 2027. Tight timelines are not the only thing that are facing COCs. There are overall a number of different challenges that are being presented to communities across the country. It's not just Seattle-King County that is working with this environment. There are some significant policy changes that are being proposed by HUD, particularly a move away from housing first and harm reduction principles and philosophies. Housing First has been a tenet of our homeless response system for decades. We have a pioneer of Housing First in our community. And HUD is trying to really shift away from that. The shifts are also coming in who HUD wants federal dollars to be supporting, who is and is not worthy or deserving of getting support from our government. And that also has a substantial impact on our community and the work that is happening on the ground, the work that providers do every single day to ensure that people are treated with dignity. We also continue to have ongoing litigation. The National Alliance case, the King County v. Turner case, none of those have final rulings yet. There is hope that final ruling, particularly around the National Alliance v. HUD case, will come before the NOFO is dropped. They have added in asks of the court to extend any final ruling into FY 2026. So there may be some policy protections that are seen, but that's unknown. There is a possibility that we'll see litigation related to the FY 26 NOFO. But we're preparing for all scenarios. So work cannot and does not stop because we have to be able to respond no matter what the path looks like. There's also continued funding uncertainty. The budget proposals for FY 27 are underway and point to the federal administration wanting to eliminate the COC model and COC funding. This is a huge concern because it's wanting to eliminate funding for permanent housing projects. And we have a substantial number of permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing projects funded at the federal level. This is a significant shift in how the federal government has approached working to reduce homelessness over the last 2 decades. So we are in this pivotal moment of trying to see, are we going to see our federal government want to look at Band-Aid solutions to homelessness and no longer fund permanent housing options that actually resolve someone's experience of homelessness? Or are we going to see continued support for vital programs that have been successful in our community in helping people maintain housing and maintain stability, some for 25, 30 years in the same apartment and the same housing? There's continued effort that needs to be made so that what we see for FY 27 does not have a substantial shake within our community. And I'm going to pass it back over to Chair Romero.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelsey. Just letting you guys know I am in a new location. I apologize for that, but I just wanted to echo your point about the uncertainty and changes surrounding this year's NOFO. And just over the past year, I've seen an incredible commitment from the KCRHA staff to keep us informed and in the loop. They have meticulously aligned our proposed rating and ranking priorities to ensure we uphold our core values while seamlessly, I'm so sorry, integrating HUD's new recommendations. There's truly no other team of experts that I would trust to do this and navigate this complex process. So one of the best ways that you can see this dedication in action is by engaging with the COC. And I encourage everyone to attend our community meetings, the convenings that we spoke of, and our monthly board meetings, which happen on the first Wednesday of every month from 2 to 4 p.m. You can also join as a member and participate in our committees and work groups. We also have surveys and requests for information as well that are available, and we have them linked here. And it takes strong participation to lead us to better system decisions and stronger funding models. This is a defining moment for our COC, and our decisions this year will shape both the funding and our system for years to come. So your partnership and engagement are critical. Thank you guys so much for having us today, and we'll see you soon. Any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Okay, thank you so much for that very informative and thorough presentation. So now we will open it up to questions from the board to our presenters. Does anyone have questions? I see Board Member Foster's hand.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I just want to first extend a huge appreciation to the COC board chairs, the COC board members, as well as honestly our lawyers and legal teams that have been working on this for some time to help ensure that we are getting the resources that into our region from Continuum of Care. I do want to ask, given that there's so much at stake here and that so many things are rapidly changing, as we heard from our presenters today, and thank you so much for that, Kelsey, what the plan and process is for notifying and informing the governing board about the decisions that are happening at the COC level. So in particular, I know there's going to be a lot of attention paid to determining what goes into the application this year for fiscal year 26. And I'm curious how that's going to be communicated to the governing board.
The aim would be to ensure, especially as CEO Kinnison does her updates, providing all of that to her so that at your monthly updates, you're receiving that. And we'll continue to have really thorough information that we will funnel to CEO Kinnison. And if you all want more detailed updates, I'm happy to provide that and join subsequent board meetings.
Thank you. And Chair, I've got one more question, if I may.
Sure.
The other thing I wanted to ask, it's sort of a two-part, but one issue. And Kelsey, I'm sorry to put you on the spot for this one, but you talked a lot about what has been happening over the last year and a half with these changes to HUD and the work that's been done to help us continue on housing folks through COC. I believe in a previous presentation that we heard at the city level in our Housing and Human Services, or excuse me, in our Human Services Committee, we heard from KCRHA, is it about 4,000 folks in our region that are in PSH? And I, again, sorry to put you on the spot, Kelsey, but I want to put this in scale a little bit to understand the potential impact on our system. So either in people or in just dollars for what we are currently receiving through COC. I can tell Kelsey is looking this up right now, so I'm just lengthening my question to give her a chance, but feel free to follow up with me via email. But as we talk about this process, I want to make sure that we understand the scale of the risk.
Yep, I am indeed pulling that up right in front of me as you are speaking. And I don't know if I'm pulling up the correct presentation, but yes, we have at least, I want to say like 4,100 people who live in COC funded PSH. So that is just the COC portfolio. That's not the entire portfolio of PSH in our community, but it is around 4,100 people that are supported in units. And we're talking about places where folks have been living for some 30 plus years.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I see Board Member Baron's hand.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Well, I first just want to echo the gratitude of all of us for the Continuum of Care board members and the chairs and all of the work that goes sometimes happens behind the scenes, but the ultimate result, of course, is enabling us to tap into these federal resources. And so a lot of gratitude for that. I also wanted to just note a note of gratitude to our congressional delegation. There was a reference in the presentation about THUD. That is a reference to the Transportation, Housing, Urban Development Bill. And I particularly want to acknowledge the work that Senator Patty Murray did to enable and put in language that helped enable some of these changes to preserve a lot of important port funding in addition to the litigation. So it's been a team effort in multiple ways, and I just want to acknowledge the work that they've done on this effort. Two questions for the group. One for the Continuum of Care chairs. Where you outlined kind of the membership. Are you all like? You noted that there were new members that came in earlier this year or recently. Are you still looking for folks, or you feel like you have like what you need? And if so, like where are the areas where you might need like board members? And then for Kelsey, I think the question is just one of the things that struck me in your presentation is just that the timeline is so long for this whole process, right? And so like we're starting the FY26 federal fiscal year 26 process now with this application that we're expecting to submit soon in August. The process just to like get those even awarded is like until next year, and then the contracts last another year. So am I understanding that this is almost like a 2-year process, if not even longer, for the whole process to play out? Those are my two questions.
I guess,
Happy.
yeah, Dorsal,
Go ahead,
take
Ruby.
it away, please.
So we are in the process right now of bringing on a few new board members. We have a selection committee stood up reviewing applications we received through the month of May. And so after that process, we will likely look towards the end of this year or next year as another opportunity to potentially bring on board members. I will say, given who's here in this group, there is potentially a need or a desire for at least one more elected official. I believe, and Kelsey, correct me if I'm wrong, but the hope is to have 2 to 3 elected officials according to the HUD NOFO application. And so happy to have one of your colleagues potentially join us in the future if you have someone you'd recommend.
Okay, thank you. And I see Chair Zahalai's hand.
Thank you, Chair. Also wanted to extend my gratitude to all of the board members for all of the really hard and incredible work that you all do. I wanted to build off of the questions that Board Member Foster was asking. You know, if these proposed changes to HUD's policies were to go through, and you know, things like housing first and harm reduction were eliminated, I heard you all talk about the fact that there are people living in permanent supportive housing in the order of thousands of people who could lose their homes. Could you speak more to the consequences of these policy changes beyond that? There might be some in our community who are out there wondering, you know, if people lose their permanent supportive housing, what if these policy changes ended up investing in more sober housing or more higher barrier housing? Could the people who are displaced out of permanent supportive housing be absorbed into other options that the new resources invest in? And I want you to respond to that line of thinking, because there might be people out there who feel that way. What would be the consequences on the ground for people who have a variety of different needs out in our community?
Thank you. That is a great question, and something that we have been talking about a lot with current providers. I think there are a number of things that could happen should we see some of these policies kind of move forward. One is, I think we will have a lot of our local providers who step away from wanting to engage with federal dollars, especially if they are not wanting to shift how they operate, because there are things that are happening that are very person-centered, and it's around really supporting people where they are. You know, I think a great thing that we've seen with our local community and the providers that we have receiving funds is it's not about trying to get a person to fit a program, but people really work to have their programs fit and wrap around people. Each person has their own set of unique needs and challenges, and we have some really amazing creative people on the front lines who shift and change how they work to best support each individual, each household they work with. If we see the program shifts change that HUD is really promoting, which is particularly a focus on transitional housing, which is an up to 24-month option away from permanent supportive housing. We will see our numbers of folks who are experiencing homelessness, who are unsheltered, increase. The folks in permanent supportive housing have experienced chronic homelessness, have a long-term disabling condition that impedes them from kind of maintaining housing stability without support. Permanent supportive housing is affordable housing with intense wraparound support services. It is not housing alone. Permanent supportive housing does not work without the individuals who show up and do their jobs every single day to ensure that someone is getting a meal, someone is getting their medication, someone is getting connected to their healthcare provider. That is what we lose if we lose permanent supportive housing. It's not just people's homes, it's the vital work that frontline workers, that case managers, you know, front desk workers do every single day. That is permanent supportive housing. away from people losing their homes. If we see an increase in transitional housing is considered per HUD's definition a type of shelter. So people living in transitional housing are considered still literally homeless. So just on paper, the number of people experiencing homelessness in our community will rise. So that will mean when it comes to our system performance and how HUD evaluates system performance, how many people at any one given time with our point in time count who are sheltered homeless will increase because we will have more people in transitional housing. We're not just talking about an impact on permanent supportive housing, but also on rapid rehousing. This is another kind of short to medium term rental assistance program where folks, it's a permanent housing project. People sign a year lease, are receiving not just rental assistance, but case management supports to increase stability and increase self-sufficiency. The goal is for at the end of up to 24 months, folks are able to be independent, to pay rent, to engage in the workforce. And by also shifting away from rapid rehousing to transitional housing, we see that same thing that may happen where more folks would be into transitional housing and just continuing to have an increase in how many folks in our community are considered literally homeless.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. That's super helpful response. Just to reiterate a couple of your points, the most important one being just clarifying what permanent supportive housing is and what housing first is, because there is that very common misunderstanding that housing first means housing only, and it is not. It is the understanding that if you want to do the treatment services and the wraparound services that so many so desperately need, probably being indoors makes sense for that. So bring people indoors, give them the wraparound services that they need. And these changes, we acknowledge that there is not a one-size solution for all of homelessness. What these changes will do is take away one of the necessary tools in the toolkit for addressing probably some of our community members who have the highest needs in providing them that those services indoors, like you're talking about. So very, very destructive and challenging changes coming from our federal partners, and we hope that we can all work together to make sure that they don't go through, so that we can continue providing the critical services that our communities need.
Thank you. Okay, great. I see Board Member Aviva's hand.
I want to just also offer appreciation. You made it very, very clear that there's unreliable funding, shifting requirements, and so I have a question, but before I ask it, I want to invite other board members to the COC membership convening. It is really powerful, and if you get an opportunity to attend in July, it's a great way to just be in community and support that, just that sister within the organization of that board as well. So I will do my best to attend. I don't see the dates yet, but I would like to also invite other governing board members. And my question is specifically around something before many of the new board members joined the board, we spoke about defining regionalism. And I'm wondering, I'm thinking about the shifting requirements and reporting requirements. And if this is a time to, again, think about defining regionalism in our community, and if that feels like that might be an important step as with all of the shifting in the landscape and what that looks like operationalized.
Thank you for that question. So I would say kind of the key thing we're looking at when it comes to COC funding and regionalism is looking at how, with the changes in what may be funded, we can make sure that what we apply for new projects is addressing gaps that we have in our system. So both service gaps as well as those geographic gaps. We have decades worth of kind of system analysis and gap analysis that have informed what we're missing. A lot of that hasn't changed in over those kind of 10 years of analysis. So we put together kind of a system gap survey that we've sent out to the community to inform of these known gaps we have. where should we focus this particular opportunity for COC funds, both when it comes to service types and geographic needs. So we know that there are gaps in access to services on like the far east side of the county. We know that there are gaps in behavioral health supports in the south end of the county. So using that information to be kind of mapping and keeping an awareness that we are intentionally addressing known needs through new projects we may be putting forward with the COC funding. So we will kind of be using that insight to inform analysis around what we recommend with our priority list for projects.
Okay, thank you. Great questions, everyone. Thank you for all the great responses and analysis. So I'm going to move us along, unless there's any other burning questions, to our next presentation. And we're going to be joined by Tony Machacha, Emergency Operations Manager, who will be presenting the Winter Severe Weather Report.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, thank you so much, Mayor Wilson. I'm gonna share my screen for my presentation. Affion asked me to drive myself. So, thank you very much, everybody. My name is Tony Machacha. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Emergency Operations Manager at KCRHA. I'm here to talk about our severe weather response over the last 12 months or so, so starting around May last year through April this year. And I know it's been long. There's been a lot of weighty discussions. It's just before a 3-day weekend, so if you need to take away anything from this, if you're gonna tune out after my next slide, 2 key takeaways are sub-regional funding needs differ, but everywhere we need space. We need more space, we need more shelters, we need more beds for severe weather. And in the last year, we piloted a few seasonal shelters, and those really up the game. It's by providing better consistency in shelter availability and predictability, as well as staffing. It's been a good experience all around, and we'd like to continue doing more seasonal shelters.
Tony,
So-
I apologize. I'm so sorry. Would you mind going into presentation mode for us so we can make your slides a little bit larger?
All right, let me see. Do you have it in
There we
presentation
go.
mode now?
Yeah, now we're seeing it, and you're at the beginning of your slides in presentation mode.
All
Thank you
right.
so much,
Thank
Tony.
you. Thank you so much. So after the key takeaways, I'm just going to talk about 3 things we do. Our role in severe weather response is to maintain a regional emergency response for people experiencing homelessness, to recommend the short-term emergency shelter activation, and lead contract holder engagement and coordination. And I'll keep touching on these points as I go through my presentation. For winter weather response, which tends to be our longest, starting around November through March, we developed these two response tiers in conjunction with our partners at HSD and National Weather Service, Public Health a couple of years ago. And so our activation really kicks in at 40 degrees or below. And when it gets to 30 degrees or below, we go to a tier 3, which is a lot more work, more spaces, more transportation coordination, storage and warming centers and hotel stays. And these will also be expanded upon in the upcoming slides. When it comes to summertime, we've been following the National Weather Service's heat risk index, and we will activate at the tier 1. Tier 1 is the yellow when this primarily heat affects those who are extremely sensitive to heat and without cooling or hydration. And that is all of the people we serve who live outside. And the activities also intensify. And all these activities are listed out. What we do is listed out in our operations manual, which we have. And for smoke and wildfire, we also will start activating at air quality index 101, between 101 and 150. And when it gets up above 151, then we also work even more with our partners at public health to get buildings that have purifiers and air conditioners to get people out of harm's way. Unfortunately, we haven't had to do smoke and wildfire response in about 2 years now. So knock on wood, we don't get any wildfire this year, but who knows? Can't predict the weather. A quick look back at the last 12 months. So we had winter, most of our tiers were spent activating during winter time. We had 8 days spent at 30 degrees or below response. 26 days were at 40 degrees and below. And then for the seasonal shelters we had open, provided at least 90 days. Some went a little longer in 3 locations all around Seattle. And we had a total of 115 beds open every night. And this was offered a total of 16,900 bed nights throughout that season, which is 1,500 more bed nights compared to last year's shelter beds we had available for severe weather. And each night we served 643 individuals as compared to 497 last year, and provided at least 16,000 meals. And this is twice the meals we provided through us last year, and that's service providers that provided the meals. So people go to existing emergency shelters that have either drop-in or expanded capacity. And we also have providers who will stand up severe weather shelters just for the response, as well as for the winter or for the cooling centers in the summer. Library locations have been really critical, and we've been working with our partners both in the Seattle Public Libraries and King County Library System to provide more places for people to go during the day. And then we've been working with Mary's Place to work with their family shelter intake line. When we have an activation, that line expands to serve everybody and help people navigate to where there's safety. So in the last season, these are the shelters we had activated. In Seattle, we had 35 beds in Soto at Salvation Army, 35 in West Seattle, and the seasonal shelter up in Lake City. And with the exception of Lake City, the 2 shelters, Salvation Army and West Seattle, were always at capacity, and people had to stand in line, people had to be referred elsewhere. In North King County, Urban League has been staffing the shelter at St. Dunstan's, and that has been adequate. We haven't reached capacity at all in the entire season. So where it is, we think it's okay, but it's located just a few blocks north of Lehigh's lakefront shelter. So maybe there's capacity that switches back and forth. I've heard from the community up in North King County that they would like to find another location further away from St. Dunstan. So that's something we'll be working on the next year. And in East King County, Snoqualmie Valley, Porchlight has 25 severe weather beds. Sophia Way has 10. Friends of Youth has 9. Reclaim has switched to hotel vouchers this season. And South King County, we have a new provider at the Jesus is God Ministries that provided 30 beds. Burien has always been full at 45, and they did run out of funds at some point. And then we have really good city efforts from the city of Renton, Federal Way, and Auburn that have also been running full every night. And the family intake line, Mary's Place operates the line. They do referrals to YMCA, and YMCA has contracts with hotels, mostly around SeaTac, where they send families, and they host between 40 and 70 families on the nights we activate. When we switched to Tier 3 for the 8 days when the temperatures dropped to 30 or below overnight, Salvation Army operated either Exhibition Hall or Fisher Pavilion, as well as Soto Bay A. So that gave us a lot more beds in Seattle. And as also Lehigh Lakefront came online with 35 beds, Youth Care with 4 beds, and West Seattle went up from 35 to 45 beds. And we just recently got into an agreement to use St. James Cathedral Hall, which has up to 50 beds. Mary's Place opened up their space in downtown Seattle, the regrade, and we got 8 more families in there. And the same happened across North King County and East King County and Snoqualmie Valley. Capacity didn't change much between the 2 tiers. In the south and southeast of the county, we did get more providers through our last RFP in Maple Valley. And again, the Des Moines added 30 more beds. So that's what happened. Tier 2 and Tier 3, everywhere got full, apart from North King County. And of course, it's really the key for us with activating is to get communications out so people can mobilize in time. And so I really want to thank our communications team. They do a fabulous job of trying to get the word out as early as possible to get as many people as possible in as many formats as possible. And so this time we're trying to work better to improve our outreach just in time to get to the people who are way out there. That's been the challenge in getting to people, especially if it's an activation on a Friday or a Saturday and outreach teams are going home or they're not working. That's been a challenge, but it's also been great to know that the City of Seattle outreach teams have been working over weekends over the last year. So that's been really good. We've also been focusing on continuous improvement. We've been doing a pre-season tabletop exercise with more partners. We've been inviting more and more people to a tabletop exercise in November, and this really helps build the relationships that we need to rely on once we start activating for the winter season. And we moved from having 4 daily sub-regional huddles to 1 daily huddle. So that's one of the ways we've been operationalizing our regional approach. We have these 30 to 45 minute daily huddles to talk about what happened the night before and what's going to happen the next 24 hours. We've also moved towards making things more efficient by having the providers submit utilization data themselves. And then we've been working on severe weather page updates during the activation, sometimes twice every day, and holding the after action debriefs with providers and community partners. And as I mentioned, we had this District 5 in Seattle seasonal shelter up at Lake City as one of the new things we did this year. We also matched that with switching Sodo Bay A and Lehigh Lakefront to seasonal shelters for about 3 months with very good results. And we got the funding last year, generous funding from East King County to send more money to the cities of Bellevue and Kirkland and Redmond, and as well as the severe weather funding to expand to Maple Valley services and Des Moines. And we got the access to 4,000 square feet of rent-free space at St. James Cathedral after a year of negotiating and relationship building. And finally, we have now upgraded our policy from just a severe weather response policy to an all-hazard emergency response policy after a few months of looking at the King County Office of Emergency Management all-hazard response, as well as the City of Seattle Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. And we've harmonized our emergency response to both of those entities' emergency response plans. So our policy should be live in the next few days. I just saw an email from my supervisor that he's finished reviewing it and we'll have it posted. It'll be official soon. I'd also like to give a shout out to KC Metro, King County Metro. They're super generous in helping us support transportation management. This had been one of the hard nuts to crack when we were in activation, especially Tier 3, with the running out of room in places. People would show up at shelters and then they'd be full and they'd be stranded there. So we've been working with our partners at Metro and Raret and King County OEM. We got a grant of $40,000 in subsidized low fare tickets. And we've been distributing these as well as working with Metro to get Metro access vans. And we've also been funding providers to have money for rideshare vehicles. So when people show up and the capacity is maxed, they can easily be transported and find their way to another shelter so no one stays outside. And that's really improved our response in the last year, and we're going to keep doing this year. And as well as just improving our system response, we've had a lot of interest from our partners through Harborview Hospital and UW. There's a lot of interest in studying what we do and helping us improve how we work. So there's a number of, there's a couple of PhD dissertations that are being done on our work, including a burn injury prevention. And this happened when some trauma doctors noticed that about 15% of burn victims at UW, at Harborview are homeless. And they got the injuries from somewhere around an encampment or a tent or something like that. So there's been interest in figuring out how to reduce those injuries because they tend to lead to lifelong disabilities. And we also have another PhD dissertation evaluating a cold weather response program, cost effectiveness of our tiers. And we have a policy resource study for an MPH capstone project. And we've been participating in collaborative extreme heat event with the 3 cities along the west coast, Vancouver, BC, Seattle, and Portland. And we conduct regular check-ins with our partners, Snohomish County, Pierce County Emergency Management, and Multnomah County Emergency Management to benchmark our performance with these peer cities and peer counties. As I mentioned, one of the other ways we've improved how we respond is starting with how we let the public know about our funds availability. We used to do only one RFP, and that was it. And we kept hearing from community that people would maybe hear about this process late, or they would not be in good time. And there'll be a lot of work to get to meet an RFP when you're starting from zero. So we developed a 2-step process where we have the first request for qualifications process, which is not funded. It's all about getting your documentation in order and getting understanding what it takes to do severe weather response. So we ran that earlier in the year. We were supposed to do it by early May, but because of our policy approval being delayed a little bit, we pushed it out to next week or the week after is when we'll release our request for qualifications. And we'll work through the process. And then in the summer, later in the summer, we'll do our RFP process where all the organizations that have gone through the RFQ process will be ready and pre-qualified to simply start working on proposing good projects with us. Yeah, so finally, just to let you all know that we are still recognized around the country as having an amazing top-tier response program. The National Weather Service and NOAA gave us this recognition 3 years ago, and they haven't taken it back. So I think we're still really doing a really good job. And this is largely thanks to the partnerships we've developed and the relationships we've built over the last 3-4 years. And as we work on operationalizing regionalism and collaborating more and more around the county, this is going to be our North Star, is putting community first and building those relationships. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Let's open it up to some maybe brief questions from board members. I know we have an executive session to get to at some point, so I'm going to try to keep us tight here. Any questions? Board Member Barone.
I'll try to keep it short. Tony, I know this might be an unfair question to ask, but you touched on both the heat and the cold. And I'm kind of curious where you see the biggest gap, because on the one hand, I think with the heat, I think that there may be more like open locations. You mentioned the libraries, right, during the day. And so at night, cold will be at night in the winter, and that might be kind of a harder place maybe to do. But I'm just curious where you see the biggest gaps currently in terms of the needs for a community in terms of emergency weather shelter.
Yeah, thank you so much, Member Ron. So I know that we are moving towards hotter summers. And from our experience with the heat dome in 2021 and even the subsequent summer, people tend not to go to the buildings we have that are cooled. And we actually figured out that taking the services to where people are, meeting them where they are, works best. And so we began piloting pop-up tents and misting fans and coolers out near encampments and out near places where people frequent. We haven't quite developed that practice. It's not routine in most of our operations and our partners. And so I have that anxiety about if we get another long heat spell, we'd have to scramble and get all those resources going to meet people where they are. Because when it's 90, 80, 90 degrees, 100 and something degrees, people just want to stay in their tents and hunker down, and they're not going to come to libraries. And we saw that. People didn't go to the libraries at all to get cooling. So that's on the practice side. But as far as resources, you're right. It doesn't take much to set up a canopy and a misting fan. Like a misting fan is $60 and the canopy is like $40 or $100. But keeping people warm at night, that is recurrent. It happens. We know we're going to have at least 10 cold days, super cold days. We always have winter. And so the biggest resource gap I see is with winter sheltering and finding places where people can go reliably, predictably from November through March.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tony, I actually have a question related to heat in the summer as well. I recently had someone hand me a big stack of notes from folks experiencing homelessness, talking about the need for ice when the weather is hot, and the fact that, you know, a lot of people have maybe medications that need to be kept at a certain temperature. Obviously, food, certain food and beverage needs to be kept at a certain temperature to be safe, as well as just, you know, the need to be cool. Is delivering ice to people where they're at something that has been done or something that we could consider?
Yes, I see Member Rink is nodding. We did that in 2021-22, and then we quickly realized that we cannot keep on delivering. So we've moved to empower our partners through the contracting. We put supplies funds in the contracts, and organizations, we work with them before the heat to help them prepare and anticipate the need to purchase the supplies, so they can do their own planning and figure out just with the money, they can get the supplies to have ice brought over to their places. We've also encouraged them and have funded purchasing of ice maker machines to have on hand for those days when it gets super cold, so they can make their own ice, especially at places like tent cities and the tiny home villages.
And do we have a sense of how that's worked in the last few years? Because, you know, again, this was this year that I was handed a big stack of letters saying that it was a big need.
Yes, so it worked really well when we did some of it, and we also supported our partners in the logistics and figuring out where to get ice. Last year, I think there was a lot more need for just cold water, and I didn't didn't hear much about ice. But I feel like maybe they had already figured out how to do the ice on their own, because it's an easier thing to do once you have the money in the budget. But we're starting next week with planning for extreme heat, and we'll be talking about what happened last year to kind of help us figure out preparedness for this year. We'll know more.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have questions for Tony? Board Member Rick.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. And at the top, Tony, I want to say thank you for your work. Severe weather response is tremendously challenging. The conditions that we're talking about and looking at the slides and information, I mean, these tiers translate to really challenging conditions to be outside in, and oftentimes the work, we're quite literally talking about life or death. And so I want to commend you for your work. It's tremendously stressful. And I want to extend appreciation as well to all the contract providers who are working under very stressful circumstances to make sure people are well taken care of and also survive. And so I just want to ground us in what we're talking about with the nature of this work, and thank you again for it. And I know thank you for providing data on just what we saw in terms of activation for this past year. I'm wondering how it compares to previous years. And I say that because we haven't had snow in recent years, snow to the extent that we've had like in 2022 in particular and 2023. And so I'm wondering just comparatively, how has our like level of tier 3 activation on winter response changed over just the past couple of years, just to place it into context?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. In this season we only had about 8 days of tier 3. But what changed from the previous 2 seasons is our tier 3 has been happening sandwiched between tier 2 events. And so what looks on the calendar like discrete events has actually been continuous and fluctuating events that go from, we start with a tier 2 for 3 days, and then we drop into tier 3 for 2 days, and then we're back to tier 2 for 3 days. And so it's been going up and down, which has been gentler to service providers because the tier 2 requires less staffing and it's less strenuous. So this year, I noticed our service providers were reporting fewer burnout from their staff, fewer sicknesses and call outs. So I think this year was better, even though it was continuous. We had at some point 17 days of 2-3, 2-3, 2-3. Last year we'd have 6 days of tier 2, and then that was done. And then we'd go for a few days and then go for 15 days of tier 3. And that was brutal on staff. There was one point where an entire shelter in Auburn closed because everybody got sick on like day 12. And so we had to find places to send people in Kent and Renton and Federal Way for 2 nights. So we can't control the weather, but we thank the weather for being gentler this year. However, we're spending a lot more time in tier 2 now, and that seems to be pointing us towards seasonal shelters, like let's just open the doors and keep them open.
No, I appreciate that, because sometimes the tier that we go into doesn't tell the full story. I recall, I think it was summer 2022, that heat event. It wasn't the heat dome, but it was prolonged tier 2 heat response with very high overnight temperatures, which meant people were not getting reprieve overnight. And so while it didn't get as hot as the heat dome, it's the fact that people weren't getting reprieve. And by day 5 into the response, people were really desperate. And that's when there was the ice response that Mayor Wilson just spoke to, just to try and get folks some cooling things. So which people really appreciate. I went out myself to our some of our areas in the city that are urban heat islands where folks are to be able to deliver ice. That was definitely needed. So I want to bump that up as just something, as a response that really made an impact, and folks were grateful for it. And I want to recognize too, just with respect to time, I know we have an executive session to go to, but I want to ask just one final question, which is, you know, every member of this board is a leader in their own right, has a connected community, knows folks with space. And so I'm wondering for you, since, you know, one of the main takeaways is that more space is something we should always be working on identifying. What are some guidelines when we're thinking about engaging with our communities around potential spaces to activate around the county?
Great question. We have a 2-page document. It became an 8-page document. It's guidelines for severe weather shelter considerations. It's on our website, on our severe weather page, and I'll put it also in the chat. So if you meet anybody who's interested, who wants to know how do we do this, just send them the link. They can download it, print it, and it guide them through what the considerations are. And as always, just have them reach out to me. I talk to about 2 people every week who are interested in severe weather sheltering, and so I can walk them through the process.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Tony? Okay, seeing nothing. Thank you so much, Tony, and to all our presenters. We are now going to be moving into executive session to discuss matters related to RCW 4230-110 subsection F. As presiding officer, I am announcing that we are slated to be in executive session for 30 minutes until 12:12. If the executive session is to be extended beyond that time, I will announce the extension and the expected duration, and following the executive session, the meeting will adjourn. Executive session begins now, so governing board members, please leave this call and join the Teams link that Afyang has put in the chat.
Hi, folks. Just letting you know if you're still over here, I am waiting in the lobby for Teams. It seems to not be transferring me.
It'll just be one moment.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't me. I'll leave this meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I think we are all under the wrong name because we've used the same link. Just letting folks know that as you come in.
Everybody's me. Thank you for pointing that out, Member Foster.
Okay. I'm not actually sure we need a quorum to adjourn. I think that would be a very strange rule, but hopefully we have a quorum and we can continue. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So this brings us to the end of today's meeting. Do I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
A second.
Okay, is there any objection to adjourning this meeting? Okay, hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.